friends, welcome back to Food Prep Guide. We are back in the kitchen today and we are canning chicken. I have plans to show y'all each of the ways to can chicken. There's 3 or 4 ways, can't remember, but today we are just going to can cooked chicken. Now I like to use these 10-pound bags of leg quarters to do my chicken just because it seems to be a lot cheaper, and when I cook it in the crock pot I can get a lot of broth out of it, can that up. I have a video of that will be coming up soon. But for this step, the first step is just to place it in the pressure cooker. You can do this, you can cook the chicken any way you want to. That's not the important part. You can cook it any way you want to, but when I'm in a hurry and want to get it done fast, I go the pressure cooker route. I don't use a trivet for this. I just put the chicken straight in the pot. So let me do that real quick. And I might have to take out some of this chicken in a minute. I'm going to do some rearranging and see if I can't get it all to fit, but we don't want to go above the max fill line. So let me see what I can do here. Next step is I'm going to add my liquid. I'm only going to do about 2 to 3 cups of water, and that is just to give the pressure cooker some moisture to work with, and so that the chicken doesn't burn on the bottom. I'm not going to do any seasoning at this point. No salt, no garlic, no nothing. When we get to the canning process, I'll decide then if I want to add seasonings, and we'll talk about more about that in a little bit. At this point, I'm just going to seal it, and I'm going to pressure cook for 20 minutes. I may end up needing to go a little bit longer. For some reason, it seems to vary, so I'm going to try 20 minutes, and then I will let you know when I come back if I had to cook it any longer than that, and we'll be back then. Okay, pressure canner just went off, and I allowed for a natural release, so we're going to check for doneness. I'm just going to take some tongs and pull up one of these chicken quarters and just kind of break it apart. And I'm looking for no pink, and it's just, as you can see, it's just literally falling off the bone. This is perfect. Now when you are canning cooked chicken, you can actually undercook it a little bit. Some books, I think the Blue Book says you can cook it about 80% of the way. But I've cooked it all the way and it's fine. One thing I'm going to do to compensate for that, when you cook it all the way, it can be a little bit less flavorful and a little bit more tough, but to compensate for that, the flavor aspect of it, I'm going to add some chicken broth powder to the jars when I can them up, which I'll talk to you about in just a minute. But the next step is just to start. I have a bowl here and a bowl here, and I'm just going to start deboning it, put all the bones to the side, and I'll be back when I have all the shredded chicken ready to go. Here is our chicken all shredded up, and at this point that's ready to start the canning process. When you are canning cooked chicken, you do need to add liquid. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the broth that was created while we pressure cooked, and to strain out any bits and pieces of bone or chicken that might still be in that broth, I'm just going to strain that through a strainer real quick. Yeah, I did have a lot of little chunks of bone and meat in there. Set this aside. Okay, so we have our cooked shredded chicken, our broth that we're going to be pouring into our cans, and then you have this bowl of bones and skin left over. Don't let that go to waste. At this point, you can pop this in your crock pot. Add some carrots, celery, onion, or just onion peels, 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. You can add salt if you want to. And we actually have a separate video tutorial on making and canning chicken stock, so I'll link to that above whenever it is posted, but don't let all that goodness go to waste. Okay, I need to get all this cleaned up, get my canner out, and we will be right back. Okay, we are ready to can. I'm going to be using the Presto digital canner. This thing has revolutionized the way that I am able to preserve food on a regular basis. I just realized that I'm in a different clothing outfit than the beginning of this video, so excuse the costume change. But this pressure canner is just an example of, it reminded me of how when we started transitioning to this different lifestyle of trying to make things as homemade as possible, growing our own food, storing things in bulk, cooking from scratch. All of those things had to be worked into my regular daily routine or they weren't going to happen. I don't typically have enough time to dedicate an entire weekend to like a 12-hour canning spree. I need to do a little bit here, a little bit there, and that's what this canner allows me to do. I'm going to be able to push some buttons and walk away, go work out in the garden, not even having to babysit the canner. So if you don't have one of these, I encourage you to check them out. It's just a great way to start getting canned meats on your shelf quickly and just a part of your daily routine. So as soon as you plug it in, you're going to see this pressure can button lighting up. And if you're pressure canning, which we are, you just click the button in. Then the timer starts or comes up, and you're going to go ahead and set how long you're going to be processing your jars. For canned chicken without the bone, in pint jars, which is what we're doing, it needs to process for 75 minutes. So I'm going to turn my dial to 75 minutes and then I'm going to press it in. Now that it lights up, it says insert jars. Now this canner, in order to operate, it needs 3 quarts of water, so I'm going to pour that in real quick. Now that we have our 3 quarts of water in here, we need to insert our jars. This canner kind of forces you to preheat the water in the jars. So in the instructions, it will tell you to fill up your jars halfway with water, and that's just to keep them weighted down so that they don't float in that water. And I'll just go ahead and fill them up and we'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to fill these up with water, put them in the canner, and we'll talk about the next step. I forgot to mention that this canner can hold 8 regular mouth pint jars or 4 quart jars. So whenever I am planning out my canning for the day, I try to do an amount that's going to yield approximately 8 pints. One tip that I recently started implementing was if I come up short and don't have enough pints, I usually just toss in some beans. You can cook pressure canned beans from just dry beans. It's half a cup for a pint, and I'm able to just throw it in there, and then I can come out with a can of beans at the end. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you can fill it up with water to achieve a full canner load, and then you have sealed, clean water on hand for emergencies. Okay, our jars are in, so I'm just going to put the lid on. Let's move it to lock, put my arm down, and notice we do not have the pressure regulator on yet. We don't need that at this point. So I'm just going to lock it, and I'm going to hit the next button, and you're going to start noticing lights that move towards the right. That tells you it is warming up, and this will take approximately 10 to 15 minutes, and it will beep and let me know that the jars are hot and ready, and we'll be back at that point. So our jars are done warming up, and now we have this light over here that has lit up that says fill jars. So I'm just going to open the lid, and the jars at this point are going to be very hot, and they're filled with hot water that we need to let out. So I'm just going to start dumping my jars out and lining them up and getting ready for the next step. And this canner is just going to kind of pause and hold where it is until we are done with this process. It's not going to move on to the next step. It's not going to get any hotter or anything like that until we hit that next button. Okay, I think I forgot to mention that when I put these jars in to warm up, I also put on a pot of hot water on a stovetop around 3 to 4 low to medium heat for my lids and rings. Now I know that we are told that we don't have to heat up our lids and rings anymore. We don't have to boil them, don't have to sanitize them anymore. But I have found that I am not getting good seals with the typical lids anymore, like ball and curve, like from just the store. So I started not fully boiling, but just heating on medium heat, just enough to get that rubber ring just a little bit. I guess maybe it feels like it just gets a little bit stickier maybe. But since I started doing that, I have been having a 95 to 100% success rate on my seals. So If you have been having a hard time with seals, I know it's a big thing and there's a lot of theories out there as to what's going on, and I won't get into all that, but if you have been having a hard time getting a good seal, try going back to heating up your lids and rings. Okay, at this point the jars are still pretty hot, but you can touch them. They're not as hot as if you were to boil them. To ensure that I get as strong and flavorful of a chicken taste as possible, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of this chicken broth base. It's by Orrington Farms. I'm just going to add 1 teaspoon per jar. Okay, now it's time to load them up. So I have my funnel here, and we need to fill the chicken to 1 1/4 inch headspace, which is going to be just below that bottom ring right there. About where the funnel ends, that's about where I'm going to be filling it. And I just went through and kind of stirred that chicken and broke it up with a fork. Nothing fancy. I'm not going to pack it down, but I am just going to, I want it to get as full as possible without actually shoving the chicken down too far, too hard. Okay, that's about where we want to be. So now I'm going to take that broth that we took out of our pressure cooker that the chicken cooked in, and then we're going to do the same thing. Fill up to 1 1/4 inch headspace, in between 1 1/4 and 1. I'm going to debubble it. See, make sure my water line is still at that 1 inch mark, and it is. So this jar is good to go. I'm going to take off my funnel, wipe my rims really good. And this is just a damp rag with just plain water. Use my tongs to get a lid out. Place a ring to finger tight. And that jar is ready to go into the canner. Bring that up close so you can see that headspace and see what it looks like. Going to go into the canner, and I'm just going to repeat that process with the remaining 7 jars, and I'll be back in a minute. Jars are all loaded, so we are just going to put the lid on now. We still don't need that regulator on just yet. We're going to lock it in place, and then we're just going to click this next button right here. Now it says heat, and this is going to heat up and come to pressure, and then it's going to beep and let me know when it's time to put the regulator on. That's going to be approximately 10 to 15 minutes, so I will be back whenever it's yelling at me to put the regulator on. Okay, you can hear it beeping, and on the screen it says put regulator on, and we will want to do this with a glove. You can see that the regulator has a little arrow part, and we're just going to put that on here and twist it to can, and then hit the next button, and the canning process has started. You'll see these dots moving this direction, letting you know that it has started, and once it hits the cooling down process, those dots will start going down backwards. This canner will beep at me several more times, but that's just letting me know it's moving to the next stage. I don't have to do anything else to this until it's completely done. Eventually it's going to beep to let me know that the processing time is done. It's going to beep to let me know that the cool down phase has started, and then it's going to beep 9 or 10 times to let me know, okay, it's done, you can unplug me and get your jars out. So we'll be back when we are at that point. Because of how long it takes for it to build pressure, and then the processing time of 75 minutes, and then the cool down time is about an hour to an hour and a half. This is going to be about a 3 to 4 hour process, but anyway, we'll be back at that point. Okay, the canner just went off. You'll notice that we have a message lit up that says done. Now, one thing you need to check before it's actually making sure it's actually done is sometimes the pressure relief valve will still be up, and you don't want to lift the lid at that point. That's what this green safety valve is for. It's a lock valve, but if that pressure valve, not lock valve, a lock mechanism, if that pressure valve is still up, this locking mechanism won't be able to open. So it's kind of like a safety feature, making sure you don't lift the lid, that even though the canner says done, just looking up here and making sure that pressure valve is dropped, and it is dropped in this case. So I'm just going to go ahead and open it. We don't have to do anything with this pressure regulator. All of that's done with. Just going to open it, move my lid over here. Let me bring one up for you so you can see it up close. Okay, here we go. Canned chicken. Woo, I'm putting water all over the place. You can see it's dark brown at the bottom. That's that chicken broth that we put in there. And at this point, we're just going to, oh, I need a towel. Okay, so you don't want to set these cans directly on your countertop, so I've just got putting this towel right here and going to unload onto there. And at this point, we are just going to not touch these cans for 12 to 24 hours. It is 6:30 right now, and I usually just go overnight. And after breakfast, like around 8:30 or 9, that's when I check my seals. If any have not sealed, they will go straight into the refrigerator, and I'll make sure I use them within the next couple of days. But hopefully all of these have sealed and we'll be good to go. So just for like price reference and some encouragement to encourage you to try this, this was a 10-pound bag of frozen leg quarters. We got, I think 7 pints out of it. That bag cost $7. So we got 7 pints out of it. That's $1 per pint of canned chicken. That is, you can't even compare that at all to the canned chicken that you get in the store, which is now just astronomical. But this chicken, 1 pint, is able to feed our family like a casserole style dish or a one pot style dish, white chicken chili. Tonight we're doing chicken quesadillas. Did you hear that pop? It's sealed. So that's one of the funnest things about, oh, did you hear another one? It's one of the funnest things about canning is just hearing all the pops and knowing that your hard work it did right, it's sealed, and all is well. So I'm gonna let those sit on my counter overnight, and I'll check the seals tomorrow. I'll snap a picture when they're all cleaned up, and I'll add it to the end of this video. But I hope y'all enjoy, y'all. It really is easy to can chicken, and it is worth it, and it saves so much money. And you have a ready-made meal maker on your shelf, moment's notice, for those busy nights. Okay guys, hope y'all enjoy. Bye.